Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today's special guest is Leah Rampy. She is the author of Earth and Soul, Reconnecting Amid Climate Chaos. So welcome to the show, Leah.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate you having me.
Anytime. I read the book, and I have to say, and I'm choosing words wisely, it's a masterpiece. It is logic and reason and just educational, but woven so beautifully, it's almost written like poetry. So it's a beautiful book.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Some of that is what I was hoping for, that it was not, I can't avoid facts, and I really want people to understand, because I think plenty of what we can know and learn and understand about the living world actually is a key to awe and wonder.
Yeah, and the fact that you have a background as an educator, you're a teacher, professor, corporate and nonprofit executive, you have that background to be able to effectively communicate to people what climate chaos is and what we're facing with today.
Yes. And, my concern is that is the key for us to move forward, is to face it. Yeah. There's plenty of reasons that we might want to ignore or deny it because it's hard. I read a blog recently about, writing about subjects that are hard to write about. It's not like, it's not like lots of people are flocking to hear bad news. And that's kind of how it gets characterized. For me, it's about facing into what is real and looking at it, and also finding the beauty and the joy and the awe and the wonder that is also real. And I don't think we can just choose. We don't just get to say, let's just take the good stuff, and then I'm going to dull my senses to what's painful to see or the losses. I think you're dulling or you're enlivening. And
it's funny, I love the fact you just used the word dulling our senses, because part of the book that you mentioned, and I have my notes on the side, but you basically talk about how with social media, we are kind of dulling our senses to the actual natural world by focusing so much on this thing. And when I take my dogs out for walks, I leave my phone at home intentionally so I can deprogram and just look around and pay attention to my animals. But I see people walking with this thing right in front of their face. And they're not even looking around at what's around them. And the joke, you see people walking to poles or, falling down. But we have dulled our senses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we've forgotten that that's a key part of our intelligence. And I, guilty as charged. I spent decades kind of cultivating my mind, because that was what was acknowledged and rewarded and was part of the culture in which I moved and worked. And, the idea of the feelings, what often gets called softer, that was, if not ridiculed, at least put down.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. You got to, I'm just going to say it takes a while to reclaim that.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been made fun of, been called lots of names. We all know this. With going back to the book about logic and reason and data and information, you do have interwoven throughout the story a woman weaving a tapestry. Mm-hmm. And, it opens up, guys, with weaving the tapestry, the dog shreds it. And she just, rather than being angry, rather than being upset, she redoes it, but with a different pattern. And that thread is very powerful, because we are dealing with chaos. We are dealing with things falling apart. And rather than getting angry or upset, we just have to rethink it, redo it, reimagine it. Mm-hmm. And your book goes all through that reimagining. And actually, would it be possible, I know you have an excerpt that you wrote that's rather handy for you right now. Would you mind reading just a little part of that? Because it was so beautifully written.
I would be happy to read that. Or if you'd rather, I could read The Woman in the Cave, whichever you prefer.
Whichever you choose. This is your book. This is all about you.
Okay, well, I'll read the one that we were talking about. This is from a chapter called Kith and Kin. And it's really an invitation in this chapter to go back to the cosmic story.
Yeah.
to the beginning of time. I think when we lose the cosmic story, we really lose the thread of how we are so deeply connected with all beings and how we have evolved, co-evolved in relationship. So that's an important story. But this is the opening story to chapter 2, which is Kith and Kin. The noxious weed department of Russell County, Kansas, offers free herbicides to kill thistles, Johnson grass, and bindweed. I'm pretty sure those were not the weeds that attracted me as a 6-year-old living in that county. As a child, my mission was not to kill weeds, but to transplant them. Squatting in the loose dirt, I would find and dig up vegetable lookalikes and then carefully transfer them into the rows I designated as my vegetable garden. While hardly a budding naturalist, I grew up close to the earth, with other homes well beyond walking distance and no school options before the age of 6. Tire swings, chickens, and stray cats were my companions. I walked dirt roads, fell into snowbanks too deep to escape without help, and heard the crunch as I walked across the linoleum made gritty by the dirt from the plowed fields blowing through the cracks in our country house. Sunflowers, wheat fields, rolling hills, and tiny creeks were all a part of the world I loved. Even as I moved back east, I would only take one step into that prairie view to know I was home. To this day, being unable to see storm clouds gathering in the distance makes me nervous, a remnant memory of the many times I watched with my dad while roiling clouds formed shapes in the distance and air hung weighted with silent expectation. With no meteorologists reporting from the sparsely populated areas of central Kansas in the 1950s, families who lived here attended to the weather themselves, and life and livelihoods depended upon the accuracy of their predictions. On hot summer afternoons, the clouds sometimes built to enormous cumulonimbus while becoming gray and then blue-black, shouting their message to those watching that a storm was brewing. When sweat trickled down your back and everything you were wearing stuck to you, the pressure was building. Hot and cold fronts defined by sharp cloud edges advanced on each other and assessed whether to engage. In every storm, Dad was there, watching. I stood next to him, my pencil copying his erect and watchful, eyes scanning for messages in color and shape, feeling the signs in air and wind. You might think that I learned a lot of facts about weather during my early years at my father's side, but it wasn't like that. It was a full-on sensory experience. Smell, feel, sound, and images weaving a deep connection with wind and sky. I claim kinship with all of that. Yet wind and sky are location-specific. You must learn the particularities of your place. Your relationship in life might depend upon these sensory connections. Native American scholar Greg 𝐒𝐻𝒃 has written that in the indigenous way, knowing every aspect of our being, body, mind, emotion, spirit, is required to know a thing. That's the level of respect one must give to begin to know the wind and sky. When the term kith was used before the early 1500s, it often referred to this deep experiential connection to one's native land. Somewhere in the evolution of language, kith came to be only a synonym for kin. Without this useful word, how will I name my relationship with the land I knew? Of course, I know I can never fully understand that which is wild. Although sky will often share her plans with those who listen and watch, the trickster is always lurking to catch one unawares. With the emergence of more dramatic climate chaos, wind and sky are increasingly troubled. The ties of kith and kin strained, the rhythms altered. And when you leave a place, as I have time and again, connections are frayed. The price of admission to deep relationships with kith and kin is ongoing conversation and connection.
So beautifully written, and yet you keep to facts and data and information. And I personally love that passage because when I was reading it, I used to play in swamps and brooks and find pollywogs and watch them turn into frogs. And you know, just being out in the open like that. I know you do retreats to help people
Yes.
reconnect with nature. And I think that's something we've just lost in recent years. That reconnection where you stop and you look around. And one of the things in the book is where you lay down and you just don't think about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, observe everything around you. Even one section where you draw a circle in the grass and just see what happens in that little circle of grass. There's so much that we have just dulled ourselves to and not paying attention to. And that kith and kin, most people don't realize just how interconnected we are. And you talk about, you know, trees talking to each other. Could you explain that? I think that's really important, that people should understand that trees are not only talking to each other above the air, but underground. There's a whole network of connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is so fascinating to me. First of all, I have a thing about trees. I feel so connected, perhaps because I grew up with so few of them around me.
Well, the prairies, yeah. Watching the storms roll in. Ooh.
Yeah, it was, you know, some red cedar and cottonwood. Those were the, you know, the main inhabitants. For some reason, I just always loved trees. We owe a lot to Suzanne Simard, who is a wonderful scientist who for years has explored the Canadian forest and really studied the incredible web, the fungal network that is present in an amazing degree under all of these, particularly old growth forests. It's not that other trees are not talking to each other, but the old growth forests have had a lot of time to establish this network of communication. And so she has found through her studies that the whole idea of the living world and trees in particular as only being competitive with each other. In other words, you've got to go in and you've got to cut down the tall trees so the smaller ones have a chance to grow, is not universally true. There are plenty examples of where those trees are in fact supporting each other. And that can be sending resources to each other. In dying, mother trees often give away all of their resources to their kin.
Yeah.
Now, there are, you know, there's counter points of view. Merlin Sheldrake, who writes a lot about that fungal network, says, how do you know it's not the fungus that's inviting this to happen? I mean, they might be the orchestrators. Chicken egg, I don't know where it begins, but it is an amazing, amazing story. And the number of trees that can be connected with these hub trees or mother trees, you know, are in the hundreds, not in the single digit.
And I mean, they'll even, as you said in the book, they send out like signals to other trees if there's a danger or if there's an insect infection.
Yeah.
Things people just don't realize.
Yeah. See, and that's why I think that there are many, many paths to awe and wonder. And certainly I am not a proponent of let's just leave our brains, our minds at the door. You know, reading, understanding, learning about what's going on beyond our sight is amazing. And so too is not knowing any of that, simply sitting at the base of a tree and smelling, feeling, listening to what's going on. I mean, you're going to see the interconnections if you sit and study a tree for a while, because you're going to see the importance of those trees to the insects and the birds and all of the above ground creatures. It's a both and.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, these you call them pilgrimages. People also call them forest bathing. I've actually interviewed people in the past about forest bathing. It's a relatively new concept and not well known. Could you explain to people what that means and about the pilgrimages you offer?
Sure. So forest bathing started in Japan, and it is about the incredible health benefits in part that you get by spending time in these forests, virtually any wooded area, I would argue. But the more complex the forest, actually, the more aerosols they're producing, the more ways in which you are gaining incredible benefits. I mean, think about the fact that the trees are communicating to each other through these aerosols, and you're breathing that. when you walk through forest. I mean, so in essence, I wonder, like, what are they thinking of me? Because, are they saying, here's an enemy, prepare for attack? Or is this is this seen as a friendly encounter? So I think it's worthy of us to take something like that and reflect on it. So forest bathing, I just want to say I am all about people spending time in forests. I also want to name the importance of the reciprocity of giving and receiving. So I think sometimes we focus on what can we get out of spending a time in a forest. And it brings us back to that egocentric, that human-centric point of view, that it's all about me. So the question, and these are kinds of things that the wonderful Robin Wall Kimmerer has taught us, especially in that Braiding Sweetgrass, that incredibly beautiful book, the importance of reciprocity. So again, a relationship is not simply what can I receive from Wendy? What is she going to give me?
What's in it for me?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and what do I give back? How do we make this? That's a relationship.
Yes.
And so I think the invitation to go into the forest is about relationship. And I don't want us to lose, while we're celebrating the ways in which trees benefit us, I also want us to celebrate how we could benefit trees.
And no, I agree with you. I mean, geologist here, been in the field a ton, spent a lot of time in the woods in Maine. And there is something to be said of just sitting down and doing nothing for a little while. Because usually I was waiting for people to catch up the trail. So I had a good half hour to kill. And you would just kind of sit in quiet, listen, smell, experience everything.
Yeah.
And you actually call this the nature deficit disorder.
Yeah, not my term, but I know, I wish I had coined that. But it is a concern that's been written about how children in particular are spending less and less time than certainly than I did as a child, maybe you too, since you were talking about being out
in the woods.
Yeah, but there's children are so often overscheduled and
that was not my growing up. I mean, I know kids today, they have sports in school, and after they are just scheduled up until the second they wake up to the second they go to bed.
Yeah. The memorable piece I write about is for me anyway, was the study that in the UK, that children are more likely to be hospitalized because they fell out of their bed than because they fell out of a tree.
I saw that, and that's a shame. Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I climbed trees I should not have. I have fallen out of trees that should have probably killed me.
And we are not advocating, either of us, that people fall out of either of those.
No, we do not advocate for that. But, you live, you learn.
Right.
Don't do that again.
Right.
That hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
And you also get better climbing skills, grab on heavier. But it is important that people, I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head. We've lost touch with our connection with nature and how we can, and by not connecting with nature, we're seeing this destruction that we've done.
Right.
And it's not new. This destruction's been going on for a very long time. We were well aware of the damage back in the 70s.
Yeah.
People chose not to pay attention to it. We're now seeing a climate chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to fix this. And I think a large part of that is through our relationship, getting back into the woods, into the forest. Even the prairies are gorgeous. I mean, watching a thunderstorm roll in across, that is terrifying and awe-inspiring when you see that.
Yes.
And, it changes you. Could you, I know you do, where do you take your pilgrimages to? Where could people hop on board and join you?
Yeah, sure. I have done pilgrimages over the years through 𝐒𝐵𝒻 Institute. It's a nonprofit in Washington, D.C., and they do pilgrimages, and I've done pilgrimages to the Isle of Iona, which is off the coast of Scotland, to Cuba, to Newfoundland, to the Pacific Northwest. They do the Santiago, Campesino. There's just, I mean,
around the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have collaborated with a colleague, Beth Norcross at the Center for Spirituality and Nature. And we have been designing and leading what we call a pilgrimage close to home. So to put on that mindset and that kind of heart view of a pilgrim and walk along the C&O Canal in DC, in Washington, D.C., or to, to go to a small place. And we talked a little bit earlier before we got on the call about COVID and all the things we learned. I've led pilgrimages on Zoom by inviting people to go into their backyard or to come on, from a neighborhood park. So I'm saying that a pilgrimage is often seen as walking. It's often seen as being far from home. And there's incredible opportunity in that. And you can also put on that mindset, and you can also drop into that heart space to see with new eyes, to walk slowly, to take in, to bring home the blessings. You can do those kinds of actions of a pilgrim wherever you are.
And that is true wherever you are, because through that organization, because I did look up that organization you're affiliated with your pilgrimages, and they do have a Los Angeles chapter through some other affiliation. So I did sign up for their newsletter because they do hikes, and they have hikes through the Malibu Mountains or in Ventura.
Yes, they do. They do. And you've got a fabulous leader out there. So take advantage of it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Once we dry out, we've had a little, again, we talked about climate change. This storm of the century we've had here, guys, is not abnormal. We're going to see more and more of this because
yes, we will.
We're going to see more pollution in the atmosphere. Everything gets warmer. Warmer air holds more water. More water comes down as torrential downpours. This is going to continue to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another way that it's all interrelated,
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I always tell people pollution doesn't pay attention to borders. So it's not just an us thing. This is everybody needs to get on board.
Yeah.
And just that, reconnecting with what we need to pay attention to is so important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think that if we haven't experienced, climate chaos, if we haven't experienced any devastation, we should consider that we are very privileged because of the place we live in, or because of the type of shelter that we have, because we have been able to remove ourselves from that. And it's not always about money. I'm not saying that, but I just think less and less will we be able to find ways to protect ourselves from these kinds of actions that we never even heard of. I mean, who had heard of an atmospheric river 20 years ago, or a derecho, or a fire bomb?
Fire-tornado.
Fire-nado. We've had to invent new terms, and climate scientists, bless their heart, are, overusing unprecedented over and over. So much unprecedented. Yeah.
I mean, talking wildfires, whoever thought Pacific Northwest would have such massive wildfires? Chile, Brazil is now going through massive wildfires. This is unfortunately going to continue to happen.
Yeah. Siberia.
So who knew that Siberia would have a wildfire? That one was bananas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, going back to your book, it's, Earth and Soul, yes, but it's reconnecting amid climate chaos. That's a very important title. We need to reconnect in the climate chaos, and reconnecting, and just, I think once you see it and feel it and experience it, and the book helps with you understanding that because it's so well written. It's like I put myself back in my childhood of being in the woods and the forest, but reconnecting with that, you're going to see things differently. You're going to view the world around you differently. You're going to start looking at things saying, we shouldn't do that anymore. That's not a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. And I think that's the, that is the wondering that I hope we all have. Like, what is mine to do?
Yeah.
So very different than some books. I am not telling you these are the 3 things, the 3 steps you must take, like.
It's not a checklist.
No, it is not. It is not. It's hard work. Because I'm asking people to really consider, to sort of the depths of their being, who am I called to be in this? What is my gift that I'm invited to give to the world? So we can celebrate that some people are, I don't know, lobbying on Capitol Hill, and others are standing in front of a bulldozer, and others are leading marches, and some people are out in the garden on their knees planting native plants. It's all of that.
And, I'm glad you brought up native plants, because I myself, when I moved to the West Coast from the East Coast, I wanted daffodils and hyacinths, and I tried planting those. There's a reason they don't grow here.
Yes. Yeah.
Native plants will do just fine. Just let it happen. Don't force it. Yeah. And, I learned that everything died. It didn't even bother sprouting. It's just what works in your area is going to work in your area. Don't fight nature. That's good point. We keep fighting nature. We keep trying to impose ourselves on nature.
Because we call it another. It's an other to us.
Yeah.
We've missed that kinship.
It goes back to the kinship.
Mm-hmm.
We have to reestablish that relationship, refine that relationship. And I just keep telling people, just do what's right. Do the right thing. You don't have to use any terminology. You don't have to use buzzwords. Just do the right thing. And what works for you. So buying your book, you're available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon and local bookstores. Any other outlets that people should know of, or events that you are I know you're having some events where you're speaking.
Yes. Well, those are major, the major places you would expect online. I think there's some discount places online, and the whole gamut. So it's out there. Probably much easier to find online than it is, but you can always go to your lovely local bookstore and ask them to order it. We're so lucky because we have a beautiful small bookstore in our little town, Four Seasons Books, and they are, they're really promoters of local authors, which is fabulous. Yeah,
we need the bookstores back. That's another connectivity that we seem to be missing. Everything online, I get it. Trust me, I get it. But there is something to be said for going to a bookstore, wandering around aimlessly, and finding something you would have never thought of.
Yes. And then, probably the easiest way to find the events, both book events and retreats that I lead, is, if you remember my name, Leah Rampy, my website is cleverly called 𝐿eahRampy.com.
So easy. You keep it simple. That's what I love about you.
That's right. That's right. So it's, I do have a local live event that's coming up on March 8th, if anybody happens to be in this area. And it's in conjunction with the American Conservation Film Festival that's happening here in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. So that's fun. I will do a book talk, the opening night of the festival. And then later in March, I'm doing a Zoom call for people who live further away, a book talk. And then there are various retreats that I lead.
The retreats are awesome. Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on those myself.
Yeah, I'll have to find a reason to get to California. So
once we dry out, because right now it's a little slippery out there.
That's right. And I do want to say that if anybody's interested in the book as a book group, I did put questions in the back of the book for book groups. I'm a fan of book groups. We have one here. They're going to do my book next. We've been going for 5 years. I know some have been going for decades. And I'm happy to Zoom into a session and do a Q&A or whatever.
Nice. That's actually good to know, because I know a lot of book groups, they try to get the author just to come for a few minutes to talk about their book. So that's very kind of you to offer that to people.
Yeah. Well, I wrote the book because I want to be in this conversation about how we live in these really tenuous, uncertain edge times, I often refer to them as. So that's the conversation that I think is so important, and one I'm really dedicating myself to. So I'm happy to be invited to be in those conversations. I wouldn't be able to be everywhere, obviously, but Zoom has made a lot possible.
It really has. The online platforms, I'm very grateful personally for these. But no, it's awesome that you do these, that you are willing to be able to talk to people, and that you have put yourself out there, and that you're not complaining or offering problems. You're offering solutions, and very doable solutions that pretty much everyone can understand and get involved in and relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so, because I think these are important. These are important times.
Yeah.
We're here for a reason, and we have work to do. And I think if we're all doing what our part is, and hopefully collaborating together and building community, plus really drawing on the incredible wisdom of this earth that has experienced so much more than we will ever know.
Very true.
There's possibilities in what we might be able to do.
No, you have the solutions, you have the answers, and it's all written so well, and with history and facts, and it's really beautifully written. I'm not overstating that at all. It is beautifully written with information.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm gonna have to have you travel with me.
I will. I'll be your PR person. I'll be your hype man.
Keep up my spirits, you know.
No, anytime. I mean, I really did. You know, I loved reading it, and it took me some time because it's all in. It's like 230 or 229 pages, but you do have a lot of references you put in your questions for the.
There's a lot of references. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a very readable book at about, I think, in total 180 pages. Mm-hmm. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, how long is this going to take me? Because I am a slow reader. So it took some time for me, but I enjoyed it. It was thought-provoking because I was able to transport myself back to not only childhood, but all the geology trips I've been on, where I have been in the prairie, where I have seen those storms come in, where I have seen the groundhogs popping up left and right. I mean, it made me miss it, and it made me realize I need to do that again.
Good.
Because as a kid, you get to do that. Most kids get to do that. As an adult, you lock yourself away in a desk, a chair, a house, responsibilities, schedules. I think it's very important that you kind of put the brakes on, go head out into a forest, sit for a bit, and just be alone with yourself, your thoughts, your surroundings, and observe. As you said, observe everything around you.
You're alone with yourself and all the beings there.
Yeah. Just pay attention and look around.
I mean, I think they're waiting for us to like, hello, I'm here.
Yeah, where you been?
Yeah.
On that, guys, Leah, thank you so much for your time today. Please, guys, please read the book. It's important. It is so well written. Anytime you want to come back, Leah, when I talk more updates, any more books, and please check out the leahrampy.com website.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. I've really enjoyed it.
Anytime. I am Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. We'll talk to you next time, guys. See you later.